The King and His Spoon. Once upon a time, in the grand kingdom of Mirador, there lived a wise and generous king named Arlen. King Arlen was loved by his people for his fair rulings, kindness, and humility. He lived in a magnificent castle surrounded by lush gardens and glistening fountains, but despite his riches, he was known for a peculiar habit: he always carried a simple wooden spoon wherever he went. This wasn't an ordinary spoon. It was plain, slightly worn, and certainly didn't match the grandeur of his royal lifestyle. The ministers, knights, and even the palace servants often whispered amongst themselves, wondering why their king, who could possess the finest silver or gold utensils, chose to keep such a humble object close to him. One day, a curious young boy named Elias, the son of a baker, approached the king during an open court session. With innocence and courage, he bowed and asked, "Your Majesty, why do you carry that wooden spoon when you have so many treasures in your castle?" The court fell silent, all eyes fixed on the king. Arlen smiled warmly at Elias and gestured for him to come closer. "Ah, young one," he began, "this spoon holds a story, and perhaps, a lesson." The king rose from his throne, holding the spoon up for everyone to see. The story of the spoon. Years ago, before I was crowned king, I was not the wealthy or powerful man you see before you today. I was a simple traveler, wandering the lands to learn about the lives and struggles of ordinary people. One winter, I found myself in a remote village struck by famine. The people there were weak and starving. They shared what little they had, and though I was a stranger, they offered me shelter in a humble hut. The family who took me in had only one meal left, a thin soup made from wild herbs. As we sat together, I noticed they only had one spoon. They passed it around, each taking a sip before handing it to the next. When it was my turn, I hesitated. I felt ashamed to take food from those who had so little. But the father of the family looked me in the eye and said, "We share what we have, for we are all equal in hunger and hope." Their kindness and unity touched me deeply. I took a sip, and it was the most precious meal I've ever had. When I left the village the next morning, the family gave me this spoon as a token of remembrance. They said, "May this spoon remind you of the power of sharing and humility." The king paused, his voice filled with emotion. "This spoon reminds me every day that a king's duty is to serve his people, not to rule over them with pride. It keeps me grounded and reminds me of the strength that comes from compassion and unity." The lesson for all. Elias listened intently, his eyes wide with admiration. The court murmured in agreement, the king's words touching their hearts. King Arlen continued, "No matter how grand life becomes, it's essential to remember where you came from and the values that truly matter. This spoon is my guide, my teacher, and my reminder to be a better king." From that day forward, the story of the king and his spoon spread across the kingdom. It inspired the people to be kind, humble, and united in their daily lives. And King Arlen continued to rule with wisdom, carrying his wooden spoon as a symbol of the simple truth: greatness is not measured by wealth or power but by the love and kindness we show to others. And so, the kingdom of Mirador thrived, not just in riches, but in spirit, all thanks to the king and his humble spoon. The end.